In this episode, I sit down and talk with Thad Devassie, principal of Ratchet Strategy, about the importance of using story for business. Now, everyone claims to be a storyteller these days, but Thad is just that. He helps businesses use story to not only connect with their customers, but to align their internal staff as well. So, let's go to Brainstorm Media, where I talk with Thad. To get us started then, can you tell us who you are and how you help people create business?
Sure, yeah. My name's Thad Devassie. I'm the founder and principal of Ratchet Strategy and Communication. I help businesses define their story, kind of who they are, what do they do, why do they matter, why should you care? Those are the things that I work on. It sounds really simple, but it's a little more complex than that. But that's how I help businesses. I help them tell the story. So if they have a product or service, how do people know about it? Why should they, pick up your service or your product over anyone else's? So that's where my value comes in, is helping them articulate what it is that they do, so they actually can grow their business.
So now, do you call yourself more of a strategist or a writer?
Yeah, that's a great question. Both, actually. I am a writer, sort of at my core, and what people get back from me, the deliverable that they want is written, right? It's content. It's that story or those story points. To get there requires strategy, and so that's what I've been doing for the last 2 decades, is figuring that out, right? And that process of understanding how to ask the right questions, how to pull out of people what makes you different, and requires a lot of asking why, to the point where they're like, I don't know why, and I was like, got it. Now we're getting somewhere, because we've hit a roadblock, and that's what we need to sort of hurdle over.
Yeah, that's great. So can you talk a little bit about the process that you have? So, kind of starting from when somebody kind of contacts you for the first time, or maybe even before they contact you, what the problems they might be having to why they come to you, and then kind of your process.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm gonna divide this in like 2 really distinct clumps. The first is I work a lot with other consultants, designers in particular, and it's a really collaborative process. And that's really important for me, because my written words are, let's face it, they're not really sexy, right? I mean, nobody wants to get, they're like, I can write. And so my design colleagues are people that understand the value of what I do. And maybe a better way to sort of position this is, with my design colleagues, they're doing branding, right? And people understand that. They know they need a designer for branding. I look at it and say, what are you gonna say? Right, and so my half of it is there's the visual side of branding. I do the articulation side of branding. So I would say, a vast majority of my work, clients aren't coming to me directly. They're going to designers. They're going to my colleagues that say, wait a minute, we're going to bring Thad in here. And so I kind of come in through the back door, if you will. So that's one way. The other way is, people know about me through referrals and all that. They understand I'm a writer. It's about content. They realize they need those things, and so that's how people find me, right? And what I find most of the time is they want a shiny new thing. They want this thing over here, and I'm pulling them about 2 steps back of that shiny new thing, because I'm asking, what are you going to say? What's not working over here that you feel you need that? And so it's a constant education process to sort of help them understand that you're going to hold me accountable for this. I'm right here on how do we make that better by use of message and story.
Yeah. So why? You keep saying that it is important for businesses. I completely agree.
Yeah.
But can you kind of maybe briefly explain why it's so important for businesses to be able to kind of use story,
Sure.
or use your services basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you're a startup, a small entrepreneurial business, or you're a Fortune 500 company, you need to have what I call a framework of how do you communicate, right? And we'll start with the smaller business individual first. It's when you think about, okay, well, why does my story matter? It's like I'm selling widgets, or I'm a dentist, or whatever it is. It's like people know what that is, and to agree, you're right. But then if you don't tell them anything that's unique or different about how you do it, it's Simon Sinek and the whole start with why. I think it's helped a lot. It's helped me because people are beginning to understand they need to differentiate a little bit, right? And so there's that aspect of it that if you don't differentiate, if you're not telling stories, if you're a large company, if you're not building the culture that people are rallying around, if you don't get the story right on the inside, it'll never be right on the outside. But furthermore, if without all of that stuff, without the right story, the right messages, then it becomes a race to the bottom. And the race to the bottom is all about price, and none of us want to be in that position.
That's it, man. That's good. I have nothing to add.
Yeah. And I think that's we all know that what we provide, whatever it is that we do, it's like there's real value here. The problem is articulating that. You know what you do, but if you have to tell people that don't understand video what you do, how do you say it in a way that's different or that captures people's interest to say, oh, I can see how this would work. I can see how that's valuable, as opposed to saying, well, I can just shoot that myself and put it on YouTube. And the answer to that is you can. I could probably do a really crappy animation video. No one will watch it, right? That's why I need guys like you. And hopefully that's why people see the value in what I do. They have all the tools to write, but that's not their strong suit. It's not what they're best at, right? Yeah. And you need best at players to come to the plate when it matters most.
For sure, and that's definitely a thing that I run into as well, where people will contact me and they're like, hey, we just want to do a little animation on this cool service that we offer. It's like, yeah, it is. It's okay service.
Yeah.
You have to do more than just animate things.
Right.
And that's where we've had several conversations about just story in general. It's to me, I see that as kind of the foundation of all creative commercial projects. Yeah. It needs to start with that foundation, because if it needs to be concrete. If it's made of, really flimsy wood, balsa wood or something, it's going to fall down no matter how beautiful that house looks on top. So
right.
That's really how I see it, is kind of that foundation like that.
Yeah, I think we can, I think in today's age and social media and the need for content, and the need to push, and we need to do it different, faster, and got it. We all feel that pressure, but one of the lines that I use a lot is, if you don't have time to do it right, when do you have time to do it over, right? This it's an investment, right? And the larger the organization, the hope is that you're growing, right? So the larger the organization, the more important those messages and that story is, so everyone's communicating the same thing. Because if, let's just say my business had 5 different people, and they were all talking to you, and you're hearing a different story from everyone, then you don't quite get what we're about. And so we've got to be aligned on that. And so that's really where a lot of my work comes in, is helping people get on the same page, get aligned. Is this who you are? Are we telling the right story? If you're anything like me, I think most people are like, I don't want to be sold to, right? I mean, we all can see through it and smell it when it's coming. Give me something authentically to connect to. And that's when the customer says, or the prospective customer says, Matt, tell me more about that. That sounds interesting. Yeah. That's where we want to go.
Yeah. So you kind of started talking a little bit about kind of aligning everybody else. Yeah. Now, I'm assuming there's situations where you're talking to a single person, and then there's times where you're talking to several people. Yeah. How do you go about getting several people that have different ideas on the same page?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's the number one thing that I do in my business is listen. It's the most undervalued skill, because there's no tangible deliverable out of that, right? People, but it's the most important thing I can do. Just wrapped up a 6-month project with a client where I went and listened to 14 different stakeholder groups, donors, all types of people throughout the organization. I came with a handful of questions and started asking, and then you let the conversation go. This sort of qualitative insights and letting people share with you who they are and how they talk about the business or the organization. I'm in the nonfiction writing business, is the way I look at it. And if I'm going, a lot of times I tell people, you don't need to hire me you don't need to hire me to tell you who you are. I have to listen and figure out who you are. I'm still a customer in that sense. My job is, I refer to it as interpretation and then articulation. People are saying different things, and they may be right. They're just not aligned on how to say it. That's where I start pulling all these different ideas. But when you engage people in the process, and then you play it back to them and say, I heard that you said this and this and this, but then they see how it comes together, they're like, that is us. And they can buy into it because they know their voice was heard. And was where you start getting the alignment.
Yeah. So changing directions a little bit here. One word that we've all heard like a billion times is authenticity. Can you talk about like kind of your perspective on what you believe the importance of authenticity is?
Sure. I think it's important. It's a buzzword. It is. Authenticity to me is realizing that, hey, you know what, I don't have all the answers. I need a Matt, I need this designer, I need somebody else to come in and help me figure it out. I think that's the hardest thing for any organization or any small business owner is to sort of admit that I need help. But we can help figure out that authentic discussion by having conversation, right? That's where authenticity happens. It happens over a beer and over coffee. You get to find out who somebody really is and what they really stand for. And we've all seen this in large organizations where you got the mission, the vision, the values on the wall, but nobody's paying any attention to that. They want to point to it, and they've got somebody writing content that says it points to that, but it's fallen on deaf ears because the people inside don't believe it. If the people inside don't believe it, the people on the outside definitely aren't going to believe it, and that's where that all falls apart. And so for me, it is about that. Let's sit down and have some conversation. Let me go talk to your people. Let's figure out what your story is, and let's figure out if we've got it right. And if we do, it's really going to resonate with people. That's what authenticity is. It's not me going into a back room and saying, is this authentic? Does this sound like you? I don't want to sound like you. I want to fully describe who you are and what makes you unique. That's the difference. It's nuanced, but it's there.
I think that's definitely something that people get a little bit confused on. Yeah. Where they're like, okay, I'm supposed to be authentic. I'm supposed to talk about everything that I am into. All of like kind of the values that I have, the things that I hate, and like all these things. And it's right. You can see it. I mean, people like writing stuff on Twitter and stuff like that. And
sure.
Like, that's all right. But like at the same time, I'm like, maybe it sounds bad. But I'm like, I don't care about how you feel about those things. You know what I mean, that's not why I'm interested in what you do.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess without getting too much farther than that.
Yeah,
that's just kind of how I feel. It's to me, it's about being real to yourself, but also, having the mission of connecting with somebody at the same time.
Right.
There's still a goal. It's not just to be an open diary. It's to, share those values, I guess.
That's right. I think that another word that sort of gets mixed into all this that makes it to sort of muddy the waters a little bit more is purpose. It's like, oh well, for the business that says our purpose is to make a crap ton of money. I'm like, okay, that's a purpose. Yeah. You may not get a ton of people following you for that. So beyond that, do you want to be the best employer that you can be? Do you have something in the values that says, look, we give back in certain ways. We do other things. Those don't necessarily become specific messages, but they're part of the overall story. And so one of the things that we develop is what I call a message framework. We bring all this stuff together, and I like to say that I like to think I'm a fairly intelligent human being, but in any conversation we're having, we have about the capacity to remember 2 or 3 things from the conversation. What do you want people to walk away with? Those are your 2 or 3 things. And Of those 2 or 3 things, you probably care about one. And so then you're going to dive deeper into that, like, Thad, tell me more about this. And you're like, great, you've just given me permission to talk about a bunch of other things. That gets to my purpose. That sort of shows my values. And it's not wearing your values pin. It's not wearing it on your sleeve that way. But it's talking about it in ways that you're telling stories. How did we help somebody else solve this problem? This is the way we work. That's storytelling.
That's pretty good, man. Okay, so one thing that you started talking about a little bit was not so much about people's potential clients, customers, but you were talking about internally.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. That's something I saw you kind of writing about. I believe it was on LinkedIn a few weeks or months back or so. Can you talk a little bit about that kind of importance of story within a company?
Absolutely. I think I cut my teeth on internal communications, and that's probably where I learned more about messaging and buy-in and that understand the sort of inside out. If you want it to work on the outside, you better get it right inside first. And let's think about it. I mean, we've all worked with or for organizations that roll out a new campaign and the people inside are going, oh my God, it's a terrible idea, or whatever it is, because they weren't part of the process, right? And so culture is a huge thing, and engagement with people that actually do the work of the business, keeping them engaged and informed of what's happening and soliciting their feedback through the process. I found that engaged organizations do far better with their external communication because they're getting the internal thing right. And that's the hard thing, because we value that when it's in chaos. We realize we gotta fix this, and it's like, the way I talk about it is I don't want to be in the crisis communication business. I want to be in the crisis mitigation business. Let's take care of these things before they become problems. And when we have a bunch of ambassadors, to use a corporate term, every one of these people are actually marketing people for your company. They're out there talking to other people. Have we given them the tools to do that effectively, to talk about us in the way that we should, that's more than just a slick marketing video or a brochure or whatever it is? Are we really equipping the people that actually engage with other humans and develop relationships to find value in what it is that we do?
Yeah. So what would you say that people should do before they talk to you? So let's say a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
They're interested in kind of telling their story or doing some sort of marketing campaign. Before they contact you, what should they do?
Yeah, I think the question that, or the development process that I look at, they go, I need social media, I need a website, I need all of this thing, and the question is, great, what are you going to say? And write it down. They may be closer than they think. I'm very much a believer in your story is your story. I'm here again to sort of interpret and help you articulate. I'm not here to tell you what it is. So I really do need that feedback from, whether it's a small company and it's the CEO or it's the chief marketing officer, whoever it may be. Sit down and figure out, who are we? What do we do? How do we provide value? Write these things out. If you get stumped, then, and even if you don't get stumped, I think the idea of, now let's check this externally. Let's check this internally. Is this what our people think? So it really is just sort of, doing a preliminary check of, let's look at the last brochure. What did we say there? Because the problem with that approach is, as marketers, as communicators, we tire of the messages that we send. In today's world, we know that people are just inundated with messages. You got to live with that longer, and you've got to repeat it over and over and over before people hear it for the very first time. And we pivot too quickly because we get bored with it. To me, that's the biggest problem. It's like, if you've got something good, live with it for a long time. It's like the Energizer Bunny, right? It's still going, right? I mean, they're hanging on to something that works and that people know it's their brand. If you've got something good, don't abandon it. And that's part of what I think I do, is like, you've got something really good here. Let's tweak, but let's not abandon yet, because you've got something really good. Maybe you just haven't said it quite in the right way that's resonating.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. All right, so final question is, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I do a lot there, but my website is ratchetstrategy.com. You can find out about the work that we do. So much of it, and I'll just be honest, is people don't like to admit that I need help in this stuff, right? I say all the time, like, we have a lawyer, we have a doctor, we have an accountant. We always ask for help there. Yeah. People don't ask help like that. I really need help articulating my thoughts. We've got all the tools to do that, and so we're a little reluctant to ask for that kind of help until we've had a problem, and then we need to undo it. So again, I try to get in front of folks and help them tell their best story. But yeah, all the information you can find right there on the website.
Awesome. All right, so I lied. I have one more question.
Yeah.
So you have a project with Jeremy, and we talked about this project with him a little bit.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear kind of your take on Joy Venture. Yeah,
Joy Venture is it's a passion project. Joy Venture is about telling stories, or actually we're not telling the stories, we're allowing others, we're using the platform to let others tell the story of, dreamers and doers who are discovering, developing, and spreading their joy with the world. That's sort of the nutshell. So what is it that, I think we all have had this moment at least some point in our lives, if we've been in the working world for a while, of, I'm tired of being in this cubicle. I think I was meant to do something else. And so we're allowing people to tell stories of how they took a hard left or a hard right to go do something else, because that story is going to resonate with other people that don't know how to get out of that discover, and then how do I develop that? And so for me, it's just massive encouragement to hear other people that have done, wow, just crazy cool things that you didn't think they were capable of doing, or you're not trained to do that, but they went and did it anyway. That stuff inspires me to take risks and to do things, like you making Midwest and doing things that maybe a couple years ago, you're like, I don't know how to run a conference. I don't know how to do this stuff. But it's like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and we're going to figure it out. And so Joy Venture is the telling of those types of stories. And for me, would it be great if we find those entrepreneurs that need help, defining and developing their story, or from Jeremy's standpoint, building out their brand? That'd be great. If not, if the best thing that comes of it is I get to meet these people that are doing incredible things, that's fuel for my soul that keeps me going too.
Yeah. All right. So another. Sorry.
That's okay.
Is there any, you think, common themes or patterns with the people that you've talked to with Joy Venture? Anything that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we have on our website is, this is the story you haven't heard. I think we all, myself included, we buy into this idea that, well, they did it, I could never do it, right? By the time we hear of someone's success, it feels like an overnight success story. That when we peel back the veneer of that, we realize it took 8, 10 years or whatever. That's the story we want to tell. And this isn't, for us, we're so happy that your new venture is going well. Tell us how hard it was to walk away from a paycheck or try something new, how scary it was, and the failures that you had, because that's what someone else is feeling right now, right? And so that exists in everyone's story. I don't think we've had one yet there where people were just like, well, I just sort of walked away from this and it was just like, wow, this was just fantastic, and it was problem-free, right? It's like, we just have to embrace that it's a struggle, but that struggle's worth it in the end.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right, well, that's all I have.
Awesome.
So, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Really great.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.